Hey guys, today I'm going to be taking a look at NixOS. NixOS is an independently developed GNU/Linux distribution. I said it, GNU/Linux. It aims to improve the state of the art in system configuration management. That's a little blurb from DistroWatch. Not exactly sure what that means. Apparently, the big selling point on NixOS, its big defining feature, is its package manager. Nix stores all packages in isolation from each other. As a result, there is no /bin directory, no /sbin, no /lib, no /usr directories. All packages are kept in /nix/store instead. That's pretty neat. Other innovative features of NixOS include reliable upgrades, rollbacks, reproducible system configurations, source-based model with binaries, and multi-user package management. So it seems like it's all about the package management. I'm going to go to their website here at nixos.org, and the main blurb at the top of the page, again, unique approach to package and configuration management is what they're touting here. So I'm going to download the ISO. The ISO is about 800 megs in size, and I'm going to install this inside VirtualBox. Alright, so I downloaded the ISO, and this is NixOS 17.09.3129. Anyway, I'm going to let it automatically boot into the live environment. It might take a minute or two for the live environment to load. Actually, the live environment didn't load. I guess there's no login manager on this ISO. It says, well, first of all, we're logged in as root. We're at a shell prompt, and you can tell we're root because our username is root, and we have a pound symbol instead of the dollar symbol that you normally have in the shell. The pound symbol symbolizes root. And it tells us we need to type systemctl start display dash manager. I did not type that right. I'm struggling here today. Okay. And is it actually going to do anything? Yeah. It hung for a second, but yeah. Okay, and this is going to load us into our live environment. This is the part that'll probably take a minute or two. It always takes a little while to get into these live environments. While I wait on KDE to load up here, I will mention NixOS. I've had a ton of requests since I started this channel a few months ago to review NixOS. I've had a lot of users ask me about NixOS, and I'm just now getting around to it. I've got so many distros I need to get around to reviewing. You guys are always requesting new stuff for me to review. I'll write them down, and I've got a very long list of Linux distributions I eventually need to get to. I don't know if I'll ever get to them all, because not only do I need to get through the viewer requests, then, of course, there's constantly new Linux releases that I need to take a look at to review, new Linux distros, like initial releases even. So there's just too many distros, not enough time. Okay, the live environment has finished loading. We have 3 icons on the desktop. None of them are an installer, no graphical installer. We have gparted for creating partitions. We have console, which is KDE's terminal. Then we have the NixOS manual. So I'm thinking, because of the 3 icons that are here on the desktop, we need gparted to manually create partitions. I guess the installer is not going to do it itself. Then we need the console probably to run some kind of terminal-based installer. And we need the NixOS manual to tell us exactly what to do. So this is going to be one of those kinds of installs. So this is not going to be the kind of install your mom or, your grandmother is going to do. So let me pull up the NixOS manual. I may have to do this one by the book. I usually don't like to read. I don't read instructions for most of these installs. Even the ones that are kind of technical, I usually just wing it. But I better take a look at this one. Alright, reading a little bit. Yeah, we do need to manually create the partitions ourselves. It suggests fdisk. I like cfdisk, or gparted will work too. Then after that, we need to mount. And then we need to create some kind of config file. And then we need to run NixOS-install to launch the installer in a terminal. So that it will be a terminal-based installer. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy and paste. So first of all, let's go ahead and create our partition table. We open up console. Alright, so let's create an extended for file system. We're going to label it NixOS and /dev/SDA1. The file /dev/SDA1 does not exist. No size was specified. Oh, okay. Alright, well let me cf disk. Alright, I'm going to create a new partition table. 15 gigs. Primary. We'll make it bootable. The type, it's already chosen Linux for us. I don't need to do that. Let's go ahead and write. I have to type the full word yes to write. And then, okay, we've created /dev/SDA1 now. Let's quit. Alright, now I'm going to go back and run this command here. Proceed anyway. Yep. This is making our extended for file system. Alright, and we labeled that partition NixOS. And it's very important to label that NixOS, or if you label it something else, remember what you labeled it. Because back in the documentation, the next thing we need to do is mount our file system. And you mount it with the label name. You will mount it with the label name. See this part here? NixOS. The last. So if you labeled it something else, you would need to change NixOS to whatever the label name you chose. Alright, so. Alright, the next part of the install, we need to configure, generate some kind of config file. So we need to copy that. Paste that in the terminal. NixOS generate config. Okay, and it wrote a couple of config files for us. And we actually do need to open these config files and edit them. They suggest Nano. Probably Vim would work for you too if you're a Vim user. You go ahead and open this in Nano. Alright, and just looking at this config file, there is one thing that we absolutely have to change here. Bootloader. The bootloader grub device, we need to uncomment that line right there. So that we have bootloader install grub /dev/SDA. If we don't uncomment that line, we're not installing anything. So even if we don't change anything else, we need to change that line for sure. Time zone. It's not important really, but Europe Amsterdam has been chosen for the time zone. Let me change that to America/Chicago. Works for me. Is there anything else? Let me briefly peruse this. If I wanted to enable SSH, I'm not sure if I'm going to need SSH on this VM. I don't plan on keeping it, but I'll go ahead and enable it. I'm not installing this on physical hardware, but if I was, I would probably enable firewall. I would definitely enable printing. You see the cups service here. We need to enable that if you want a printer. Enable the X11 windowing system. Yeah, we probably need to uncomment pretty much everything in this config. Alright, so let me uncomment these user lines because we need to create a user. So instead of extra users .guest, I'm going to create a user DT. I'm not sure if I need to do anything else with that. Later I'll need to set a password for that user, but I can do that from the command line with the command passwd. So I'm going to control X. I might have done enough here. So file name to write. Yep. Okay. Save under a different file name. No. What's going on? Alright, so I had to save it. Alright. Let's see what the next part of the install process after that. I think just running the install. Yeah, NixOS-install. Assuming everything I did in that config file works out. Again, I didn't spend a whole lot of time researching NixOS. We're just kind of winging it, really. Okay, so the installer actually running. Don't have any output here in the terminal. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm going to pause the video until I see something happen here. Alright, and I'm starting to get some output here in the terminal. Okay, so the installer, I'm guessing, is running, so I'm going to pause the video for a few minutes. I'm not sure how long the install will take. Alright, and the installation paused here for a second. It gives me a warning in configuration file /etc/nix/nix.config. Unknown settings, signed binary cache. Not sure. I'm not sure what's going on here. I don't know if I can... That just paused the installation or killed it. I even closed the terminal. Not sure. Man, I've been spending quite a bit of time here this morning trying to get this installed. I actually have to leave to go to work. I don't really have time to start over on this. Let me reboot the machine and see what happens. And of course on reboot nothing happens, so yeah, it didn't actually install anything. I'm actually going to have to go through the install process again. Let me attach the ISO again and get back in the live environment and run through all this again. Not on camera. Next time you guys see me, I'll hopefully have everything set up, or at least if I feel like I need to show you something in the install that you haven't seen so far. But I shouldn't have to make any partitions or anything. All that's set up. I just need to run the NixOS installer again. I may need to play around in that config file first, though. Anyway, I had to launch the display manager again. Already the 45 minutes or an hour I've spent playing around in NixOS this morning, just trying to get it installed. I can tell you that the install process is kind of a pain. No one other than advanced Linux users should really be using something like NixOS. There's way too much configuring stuff in a text editor. This is not something I enjoy doing, to be honest. Not now. When I was younger, these kinds of installs were cool. Now, just for sake of time, I could spend hours trying to get this thing installed. Anyway, I'm going to pause the recording. Alright, so I ran this command NixOS-rebuild switch. Apparently, you're supposed to run that command anytime you change something in that Nix config file. I didn't run it the first time. I'm not sure if that's causing me problems or not. I'm just taking a guess here. Alright, so I finished rebuilding that config file. Now I'm going to run the NixOS installer again and see what happens. Syntax error, undefined at mount. I probably didn't mount the drive. Mount. Now it's already mounted. So syntax error, undefined at... So there's something wrong with that configuration.nix. Okay, so I mistyped something in the config file. So I corrected it. Now I'm rebuilding the config again. And I started the installer again. And I'm pretty much out of time this morning. I'm going to go to my local Mexican restaurant. I'm going to eat a few tacos. Then I'm going to head to work. And this might be a multi-day install and video here. Anyway, I'll be back. Okay, I actually sat here for a few minutes while the installer was running before I left for the Mexican restaurant. And it failed again. Warning in configuration file /etc/nix/nix.conf. Unknown settings, signed binary caches. Anyway, My first attempt at installing NixOS, complete failure. I'll try again at some point. Peace, guys. And you gotta be kidding me. I leave for a few minutes to go pick up some food. I come back. And I guess when it hung on this warning from before about that configuration file, unknown settings, signed binary cache, it hangs there for a minute, but it continues to build the system. It updated the Grub2 menu and was asking me to set a new Unix password. So go ahead, do a system administrator password. Installation is finished. I'm going to reboot the machine, and I guess I'm good here. All right, and this is it. My freshly installed NixOS. That install process could be a lot better, but I'll get to that at the end of the review. Let's check out the NixOS desktop. All right, my username was DT. My password. Did I set a password? Yes, I did. I did it in the terminal with the passwd command. Okay, was that not my password that I'd set? Come on now. What password did I give this user? Did I not give this user a pass? I may have to drop down into a shell and give this user a pass. Let me drop down into the shell. Since I can't log in as DT, the only other user I could log in with is root. So I can log in as root. So pass wd DT. Enter new password. Okay. I'm going to reboot. Alright, so I rebooted, and, well, the guest editions are working out of the box on reboot. Let's see if my password is also working. Yep. This has been a really interesting experience here installing NixOS. I haven't struggled with an install like this in a while. There's only been a handful of Linux distributions I've installed on this channel that I've had to fight with as much as this. Very early on, I did a minimal install of Sabian where I messed up and I downloaded a very old ISO of Sabian that was 11 months old. That thing was a beast to get to function correctly. But the NixOS install, I think it's been even worse than that. Alright, I'm just going to quickly go through the default programs installed on NixOS, if there are any. Applications. Actually, there's nothing installed. That's what I was thinking. So it's because it wouldn't make sense for me to have to struggle with that config. You know, do I want network manager, and I have to set up my own username and set up Grub bootloader and all that. It wouldn't make sense for a full suite of programs to be installed on this thing. So there is no software for me to review. So like if I wanted to install something, I probably would need to pull up the NixOS website. The problem is, with nothing installed, there is no web browser. All we have is the settings manager for KDE for the desktop environment, and we have the Dolphin file manager. I don't have anything else. Do I have a terminal? Is console on here? Console is. Alright, is Firefox on here? Surely they gave me a web browser. No. Just typing browser. Returns nothing. Yeah. Okay. It says the NixOS manual, view in a web browser. Wonder if that will actually launch anything. You see, we don't have a web browser to even view the manual. Luckily, I'm doing this in a VM. I can pull up the NixOS manual on my host machine. Alright, if I'm reading how to use their package manager correctly, nix-env. Let's see, how to install Firefox-QA. Not exactly sure what the Q and A flags are for, but I just want Firefox. Will that get me Firefox? Okay, I guess that was actually a search query. It tells me the versions of Firefox that are available, I guess, in the repos. So, yeah, reading the documentation, Q and A, that's the Q is the query flag, A is available. So I'm querying available packages called Firefox. Okay, that makes sense. Now to install Firefox, it's nix-env and then -I for install Firefox. And I didn't specify a version number. I'm not sure if it's going to go with the latest one or not. Yep, there are multiple derivatives of Firefox. It's going with 58.0.2, which was the latest in their repos. Alright, so that's good. We're able to at least install software here in the terminal. Very, very minimal install with just the terminal as the only program. Usually, most minimal distributions give you at least a terminal, a text editor, and a web browser. Now, if you have a terminal, you have a text editor. And if you have a terminal, you really have a web browser too, because you can install a web browser, even a terminal-based web browser such as Lynx. All right, now do I have Firefox in our menu system anywhere? Run Firefox, yep. All right, so that would be how we would go about installing, I guess, software here in NixOS. I don't know if they have a GUI package manager or not. Judging by the documentation, though, and judging by just everything about this distro, I strongly suspect they don't have a GUI package manager. Reading a little bit about their package management, I'm not going to get into it on this video, but you can install, of course, binaries, such as we just did. I'm sure you could probably build stuff from source in Nix. Nix expression languages, basically tells you all about the Nix syntax. One other thing I want to take a look at, I'm going to cd into the root directory. I'm going to list the root directory with ls. So we have bin, boot, dev, etc. Everything you expect to find, but let me cd into bin. Bin is normally just packed with all your programs, your executable binaries. There's nothing in bin on this system, so let me cd back to root. I'm going to cd into, where is it? Nix. They have a Nix directory in your root directory. List that, and it has two directories, store and var. I believe the store directory is where all your packages are found. It's just a bunch of gibberish for the most part. Now, it does have package names. I see Perl and GCC, various config files. Okay. Again, I haven't done any research into this, but for those that are interested in the Nix Linux distribution, obviously package management is one of its defining features, the Nix package manager and the way it actually stores your binaries on the system. All right, and that's going to conclude my review. I actually started this review, 2 hours ago, probably, maybe a little more, when I first started. Let's go over the installation process. What do I give the installation procedure as far as a grade? Ooh, that thing, it's hard not to give that a complete fail. That is one of the least user-friendly Linux installs I've seen in a long time. The Arch install process for mainline Arch is so much easier than what I just went through with the NixOS install. The Arch install, even though you kind of do have to read the wiki if you're a new user, for the most part, it's intuitive. The way it's laid out, yeah, you have to configure some stuff, in the text editor, and but it's all very straightforward. Nothing is straightforward in NixOS at all. That config file, that massive config file that you have to edit, and I didn't edit it much. I uncommented some stuff. You really need to actually add lines to that thing. There is a whole section of the manual For example, my user, I didn't add my user to any groups when I uncommented the user line in that config file and created the DT user. We needed to add a line to add that user to the wheel group, the pseudo group, the audio group, video group, all that. I didn't do any of that. You can get into some really advanced stuff with that config file. This distro is not geared toward the new user or even the intermediate user. This is very much for the advanced user. 99.9% of the people that run Linux are not going to need a distro like NixOS. It will not serve any purpose for them, really. So even though I give it kind of a fail, I'm not the user thereafter. Even though I'm kind of a Linux enthusiast, I have no reason to configure my system, with such detail as NixOS provides. So I'm really not the user they're gearing this toward. So I don't like the install process at all. As far as the NixOS desktop, there's no desktop to review. We haven't installed anything. It comes with KDE Plasma out of the box, but there's no software at all installed on the system. It is a very, very base install. You have to install pretty much every single program you want to install on this system other than the KDE desktop environment, the Plasma desktop environment, and also had, of course, KDM, the login manager. But aside from that, and console, KDE's terminal, nothing else is on here. So you guys that are, kind of Linux geeks, especially you guys that, like to do these very detailed, minimal installs. Maybe you guys like to play around with servers and things like that. NixOS is worth checking out. I think it's an interesting project. I'm going to keep track with NixOS, the future development of it. I think it serves a purpose for again, a very small niche of Linux users out there. But check it out, guys. Peace.